condition in this world, that shows us the condition you're going to be in the next world. Like this world, we said this, we don't believe in life after death. We believe in life after life. It's a continuation. It's a process. They're connected. We live this world in the next world. We live the next world in this world. Rabbis used to bless each other. Olamcha tireh b'chayecha. I bless you to see the next world in this world. So what do you answer? Says the king, the Kuzari. What do you answer? The fact that you are so mushpal. What's the word for mushpal? You're so destroyed and weak. Maybe that shows that God really doesn't want you. That God chose someone else. That God pushed you away. Maybe that's the proof, like the Christian said. The Christian said, God, you sinned, you messed up, and God, He changed you. He switched you with us. That's what the Christians say. God chose us instead of you, and you're basing your whole future based on your experience in this world. So how do you explain that? And that's a very difficult question. So 113, the Rabbi answers. I see that you're looking at our condition, the way we are right now. You're bringing proof that we are no longer the chosen people because of our situation at the moment, right? Where we are so weak, right? But I think you have a mistake, says the Rabbi. Ubahem hayu mitpa'arim gdolei ha'umot ha'ele. You think that the sign for success, the sign that you're a righteous person, or the sign that you're going in the right way, is that you're having success physically? It's not true. Look even at how the world works. Look at the world. Look at the people. Who do people value? Even in the big nations that you mentioned, Christianity, Islam, who do they value? They value somebody who said that if somebody hits you, turn the other cheek. In other words, he's weak, he's not fighting back. Or that's what the things they bring in the name of Yeshki. Or if someone took your blanket, give them also your jacket. Right? And והגיע הוא וחבריו ההולכים אחריו מאות מן השנים מן הבוז והייסורים וההרג. People value people that pay a big price for their idealism and for their values. This is who people value. That's the fact in the world. If you look in the world, right? So you're trying to bring a proof that because we're so weak and forsaken, right, the moment, that's a sign that we're not the chosen people. He says, not at all. The Rabbi says, look in the world. Look from the nations of the world, the people that you see. Who do they value? They value people that were suffering and went through difficulties. In Christianity, 400 years they were suffering before they became the big nation. And right? And that's what you see, the whole idea in Christianity of the suffering servant. The more he's suffering, the greater he is, and that's who they value. And Muhammad was also chaste, and he was chaste, and he was worth nothing until he conquered it and overcame it. And you see the people, he says, who are the people that the nations, who do people value? Is it the rich kings or the big wealthy people? No, it's the people that stood up, paid a price for their values with idealism. Those are the people that they're talked about, that people are remembered. Right? And therefore, therefore our value is greater. We're the fact that we're suffering and we go through such difficulties and we're pursued in every nation, and we're kicked out from nation to nation. This shows that we're even greater than the situation if we would be successful and wealthy and rich, because it's sort of like we say that when there's a person is sick, then the Shechina is above his head. There's this extra presence of godliness. It shows that God cares about us. That God is when He's punishing us, it's like we're happy that He cares, that He's dealing with us. He's not just saying do whatever you want, I don't care, and let you know. And this is hard to understand. This is what the Rabbi is saying. And again, we said the big thing in Christianity, turn the other cheek. It's important to understand this is like part of the Christian morality. The Rav Kook explains that, and you have to understand everything that comes from Christianity, it's all ideas they took from Judaism, warped it. There is something called turn the other cheek. The Torah says there's something called ne'elavim ve'enam olvim. Somebody who gets shamed and doesn't shame back. That person is considered someone that is like a chassid, the highest level of holiness, where someone can be shamed and not shame back. But that's a chassid. It means that you're on such a high level that somebody shames you, you're able to feel such compassion for that person. You're able to feel, oh, poor person, that this is the way he has to behave because he doesn't know how to express himself. And I see what I could see the pain the person's in. But the mitzvah in Sefer Chinuch, mitzvah Shin Lamed Chet, the mitzvah says that the Torah does not command you to be like a stone. If somebody hits you, you're allowed to hit them back. If somebody curses you, you're allowed to curse them back. It's part of defending yourself. It's part of self-respect. And you cannot demand from, especially not children, or especially not simple people, to be on this level to turn the other cheek. Therefore, Rav Kook said, when the Christians came to all kind of barbaric nations and told them, from now on you turn the other cheek. So they did. They turned the other cheek. But they built up a resentment. They built up anger. And then when finally they're able to have a war, finally I can let it all out. So therefore he said that statement of turn the other cheek, and that in the name of love and peace, what Christianity brought to the world, they brought more cruelty than anything could ever imagine. Because that statement, and just on a side note, I know I grew up, unfortunately, our parents came from America and they were Balchuvas and they grew up with non-Jewish communities. I grew up, you're never allowed to hit back, even if somebody hits you, as a child. And it created major, major problems. I tell my kids, if someone hits you, you can hit them back. Defend yourself. Depends which kind of kid it is. If it's a kid that before someone hits him, he already hits back, you don't have to tell him that. You can say, listen, he didn't realize, talk to the teacher. But if it's somebody who doesn't know how to defend himself, he has to know how to stand up for himself. It's very important. And therefore, so this is what we're saying. So, we as Judaism do not see a value in being a suffering servant. We don't see a value in being weak, right? But we understand that this is what we need right now. We also don't think you need to be rich and that everyone has to be rich, and that's the goal of reality. And we don't idealize the weakness and the and being, beaten. Obviously, it's not what we're talking about. But we understand that we had a certain fixing to make. We had a certain tikkun that we had to go through. But and therefore, the idea was to accept that this is what God is putting you through. And it also says that when we're in galut, when we're exile, statement was Kechol shaguf mosif binyan, hanshama mosif churban. There was a statement that came from the Chovat Lavavot that as the body is more built up and taken care of, becomes more built, the soul becomes more destroyed. That was true in the exile. The physical reality did not work well for us, and therefore the mission of us being in exile was to be like someone who's sick and has the Shekhinah above us and Hashem is with us, and to accept this test of being weak and being beaten. And that's what we had to go through. We had to put our head down and learn hachna'ah, learn to accept the difficult reality. Amar Kuzari, after this big statement, the Kuzari says, Kenu ilu haita kniyatchem beratzon. I could understand what you're saying if you would accept the fact that God is punishing me and I have to accept this challenge. Aval hi be'echrach, but you weren't accepting this. You weren't what's called kabbalat yisurim ba'ava. You weren't saying I accept this challenge with love. What were you doing? If you had the ability, you would have killed your enemies. You couldn't. You had no weapons. You had no state. You had no ability to do it. You were weak, and you had no choice. So you call that a great value. The fact that you were in exile and you were suffering, that's considered how great you are, because you accept the will of God and you accept the challenge that God gave you. That's really a big thing. But you didn't accept it, you didn't want it, and you were always complaining about it, and you wanted to get rid of it. Right? And you're saying he says, I agree that it's a higher level to be, the king says, I agree it's a higher level to be than rich and wealthy, to be able to the challenge of going through suffering and difficulties and overcoming it, that's true. That is really a higher level than rich and famous and respect and have respect and everything else. But you didn't choose it. You were forced into it. And how could you say that the exile is something that cleans you out? Like we said, there was a machine. The nation of Israel are like a machine. You ever see Robotrons? When I was a kid, we used to watch a show where there was like robots. They come together and become this huge robot. Little pieces, they all join, and then they can take on the big bad enemy. The Jewish nation as a nation is this incredible machine, but it wasn't working. So God dismantled all the pieces, sent them to four corners of the world to be cleaned, to be fixed, to be refined. And then we come back and the machine is built and the nation comes back again with its full strength. But you didn't accept it here. You're suffering with no choice. So what's the value of these suffering? I have to say, I had it wasn't my fault, but I had to go to do some course for driving. And I was sitting there so upset. What am I doing here? Once it started and I started learning it, I was like so thankful I'm here. What a gift. I need to learn these things. There's so many accidents that happen for no reason. For no reason. There's so many wounded people and people that die just because of a lack of patience, a lack of paying attention, a lack of or being too tired. All these things that, and you realize, so a lot of times you're pushed into something, but you realize, wow, I accept it. And it's like we just we've been hearing about these stories of the prisoners, our how do you say, our captives, chatufim, how do you say that?
Hostages.
Well, hostages. We've been hearing stories of our hostages. They come back with this incredible faith. This girl, a Gamburger, she was supposed to go out And they while they're in prison, in the dungeons, in deep in the cellars of hell, they're trying to all day long convert to Islam. We'll make it easier for you. We'll save you. They're pushing them all the time. When it came time to go out, they give them a Quran. Here, take the Quran. You have to take the Quran. She said, I'm not leaving. I'm not taking your Quran. I'll stay here. I'm not taking the Quran. And they had no choice. They let her go without the Quran. Can you imagine the faith and the strength? And another story I heard. Keith Siegel, 500 days in prison. He comes out of prison. His daughter asked him, what do you want for Shabbos? She figured he'd say steak or what kind of food. A kippah and kiddush. I want to make kiddush. And his daughter came on TV and she spoke and she told the story, the following story. She told the story that when their father was in prison, he suddenly felt this incredible desire and protection. And you hear this from many, many of the hostages, talking about this feeling God is with them and this love and this being uplifted. And again, part of it is from all the prayers that everyone's praying and all of the connection. They tapped into something that is unbelievable. Anyway, this man, Keith, wanted to say the only prayer that he knew was Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, Amen. That's all he knew. One day, in order to torture him, they put him in front of a TV to watch a food show in Tel Aviv. Seafood and suffer. And in Tel Aviv, they're walking around. They gave somebody food to eat. Guy without a kippah on made a bracha. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam borei minei mezonot. He happened to hear this bracha. And now, everything he ate, he made borei minei mezonot. It was the only bracha he knew. And that's what he was holding on to. Shema Yisrael and borei minei mezonot. He was making the bracha. And when he got out of prison, this guy, Yedidia Meir, who's a writer, he put out the story. Right before he put out the story, this woman writes to him, I want to tell you something unbelievable. In our Yeshuv Naveh, each family chose one hostage, and we did something for their success, something for them to be saved. Our family, we took on the hostage Keith Siegel. And the mitzvah that we took on as a family was to make the brachas b'kavanah. We took a big sheet of paper. We wrote the names of the kids, and every kid who made the bracha with kavanah, he got a star, and this was the family mission. And then he comes out of prison and he says, what kept me alive was the blessings I was making. It's an incredible story. Wow. So, again, like we're saying, the Jewish people in the exile were sick, and we had the Shekhinah above us. We had this very high level of connection. And the king says, okay, but you didn't choose it, and you didn't accept it. There's another story of this Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk, that him and his brother were in prison. Why were they in prison? Jews were always in prison, rabbis especially. They're in prison. And they wake up in the morning. Rabbi Elimelech wakes up in the morning and he sees his brother crying on the corner of the room. And he says, why are you crying? He says, because I'm in prison and I can't pray because there's a bucket where people are using the bathroom in this room, and you're not allowed to pray in front of something that smells and something that is disgusting. And Rabbi Elimelech says to his brother, don't you understand? We're in this world for one thing, to serve God the way He chooses for us to serve Him. The way He chooses for us to serve Him right now is not to pray. Every moment that you're not praying, you are close to God in the highest way. And therefore, you should be happy to serve God in the way that He now chose for you to serve Him. And Elyon says, wow, Rabbi Zish says, I didn't think about that. He starts to dance. And they're dancing and dancing. And the guard comes. What's going on here? Noise, jumping, screaming in the cell. He sees two guys dancing. And they can't stop. So he asks the guy sitting there, other jail cell people, why are they dancing? We don't know their language, but they were looking at the pot of bathroom and pointing at it, talking about it. It has something to do with that pot. Okay, let me show them. Takes out the pot. The second the pot goes out, Rabbi Melch says to Rabbi Zusha, stop. I think that now the way for us to serve God is to pray. To be connected to that level of service of God. That level of connection. What does God want from me right now? If I'm going through suffering right now, and this is my challenge, this is the way I need to serve God. It's a very big, we see a lot of people go through suffering and go through challenges. Some people, they break. They go into heavy depression and they become non-functional and they keep thinking, when will I, that's it, my life is over. Other people say, this is the way I need to serve God right now. With one leg, with one hand. We shouldn't know, but this is what God wants. And that's called accepting the suffering with love. That's a very, very high level. There's like a story the Chafetz Chaim tells. I'm telling more stories because I want to do the Siyum next week and we'll make a party. So we'll tell little stories. Another story the Chafetz Chaim tells, one of my favorite stories. There's a woman sitting selling apples at a stand in the marketplace. Some not nice man comes, turns over the whole shelf of apples, the whole stand. And she's standing there screaming, my apples, my apples, my apples. And people are walking by just taking them because they're all over the place. A wise man walks over there and says, stop screaming and start gathering as many apples as you can. In order to make that switch and say, wait, the apples are no longer mine. They're gone. I need to now function in a new way. I need to now accept the reality and work with what I have. There's a certain level of acceptance, a certain level of belief in God. And this is a mindset. Okay? This is now how I serve God. This is what God chose, how He chose for me. This is what I need right now. This is what I need. Again, these things are easy to say, very hard to live it. But the fact that we know God doesn't give anybody a test they can't overcome. We learn it from the story of Yosef and the cows. There's the 7 fat cows and there's the 7 thin cows, and the thin cows swallow the fat cows. What does that mean? God gives you the tools, the ability to prepare for the challenge that's coming, and then the challenge comes. It's like this, also another story of this hostage named Sapir Cohen. I heard her speak. You could look online. She talks in Hebrew and English. She goes around the world talking. She was a hostage. She has a story that's unbelievable. 6 months before she was taken, she had this incredible fear that hit her. Something bad is coming, and only God can save me. And she didn't know anything about Torah and mitzvahs. And she began a search. She felt like she has cancer. Something's happening. She's going to die. She starts going to doctors. The doctor says to her, listen, we found something, but there really isn't anything. The big problem is in your head. You have to figure out what's going on with you. One day she's looking through Instagram and she sees a rabbi saying, I have a solution to all problems. Say 30 days Tehillim. Which is the Tehillim we say during Elul? The David Hashem Ori V'ishi. Which number is that?
29.
29. Say Tehillim.
No, 20.
What?
20. Is it 26 or 27?
I thought 27. Say Tehillim, the David Hashem Ori V'ishi Mirira. Say this Tehillim for 30 days, and on the 30th day you will see your miracle will come. And she's saying this Tehillim 30 days, not knowing why she's saying it, not understanding what she's saying. And she's thinking, what does this have to do with health? It says there, if a war comes on to me, if the Hamas take me in, my mother and father have left me, and God has taken me in. And it says all these things about war and captive. The day of Simchas Torah, she's with her boyfriend. And she says to him, Sasha, let's go see your parents for Simchas Torah. We told them we'd come. He says, I have a bad feeling. I can't go. I don't know what it is, but there's something wrong. I can't go there. Everything I'm telling you, you can hear for yourself. You hear her telling the story. There's something bad that's going to happen. I can't go. And she says, there's a mitzvah to respect your parents. You told them you're coming, you have to come. And they went. And they were captives. And they both got out. And she tells her story about how she just kept saying this Tehillim for weeks and weeks and weeks. This Tehillim, this prayer just uplifted her beyond everything. The story is unbelievable. She got out and Sasha got out. Her boyfriend. I mean, first of all, you see from the story that women have it says that Sarah's prophecy was higher than Avram Avinu. She 6 months beforehand she was so in tune, she was able to understand something's coming. You can't. We know the story of Rabbi Akiva when he went through the suffering. I know this is a bit off topic, but it's not, because we're talking about suffering. And Rabbi Akiva was suffering, and when they were how do you say, peeling his skin with metal brushes, he said, now I finally can say, I can finally say that I can serve God. In every challenge, in every difficulty, any way that God chooses to test me, I can now serve. My whole life I've been waiting for this moment. And I'm not going to say Shema, and I'm not going to sanctify God's name. We learn from this. When you have a challenge in your life, the only way you'll be able to deal with that challenge is if you've been preparing for it your whole life. If you've been preparing for it every day, we say Shema, we're preparing for our whole life has to be about building ourselves to be at that moment that when the challenge comes, we will be able to stand up to the challenge and serve. And the fact that some people break and some people uplift shows you that you can. That you can, and that you have to make the choice. It's very, very difficult. We shouldn't know from these type of questions. But we have to always prepare to serve God with every way that He chooses to guide us and to uplift us, whether we know it or not. Amar Chaver, the rabbi answers, because the king just said, yeah, but you didn't choose it. And God pushed you into this difficult situation. And you didn't accept it with love. So if you don't accept it, how does it do the fixing that God really wants it to do? The only way that like a challenge works is when you understand, okay, I'm in the challenge. I obviously need this. What do I need to learn from it? Thank you, God. I see all the good. I understand that you love me and you're doing everything. Everything's guided by you, and you love me, and you're doing everything for. Everything's guided by you, and you're guiding everything. and you care about me and you love me, and something good will come out of this, then it does the job. The rabbi answers, Matzata makom cherpati melech Kuzari. This is the first time that the rabbi says, you're right. You're right, dear king. You found my weakness. You found our weakness as the Jewish people. It's true, only very few people accepted, understood the value in the suffering in exile as a godly value, as guided by God, as something that is an operation that's saving our life, that we need it, that be grateful for the difficulty you're going through. Most of us felt like, too bad. Too bad. Some kind of godly, how do you say, takala. There's a malfunction. Most of us saw it as a malfunction that happened to the Jewish people. Exile, challenge, whatever it is, it's just God is He's not running the world the way it's supposed to be run. And therefore we were so upset and we were angry and we were frustrated. Instead of accepting it, that this is from God and this is the way it's meant to be, and God, brought everything around for this to happen. And obviously it has a job, and it has like it says, when you go through suffering, you have to try to understand, why is this happening to me? Don't come to other people and say, oh, you know why this is happening to you? Everyone has reasons to explain to other people why they're happening to you. Every person has to ask himself, why is this happening to me? What can I do better that, this is not happening for no reason. This is obviously here to help me grow. It comes from God. And there I have to accept the challenge with love. So you're right. Now, obviously, we are not trying to say, like, this is the ideal, right? That to be in exile is the ideal. And we're not, making this into some, the most amazing thing in the world. Let's stay in exile forever. Because it's so great, and it's such a fixing, and it's cleaning me out, and it's God, God doesn't want you to be sick forever. You need to be sick. It has a reason you need to be sick. You need to pray. You need to take care of yourself. You need to remember what the values are. Take a step back. But you have to accept the suffering and the exile with your eyes open. Right? We can't come to Israel. It's not even an option. So the suffering has a purpose. And that uplifts us. And he says, if we would have done this. So this is what he says. Look at this. Matzata makom cherpati melech Kuzari. Ken hu ilu haya rubeinu mekabel hadalut va'akni'a lelohim ba'avur torato. If we would have really accepted and used this as a way to really kni'a, to give in towards God, to accept that you are my king and you're my father and you love us and you're doing it for good. If we would have accepted it, the exile wouldn't have been so long. Here he's talking only 600 years from when we went into exile. If we would have accepted the suffering, we wouldn't have had to be in exile for this 600 years. And here we are 2,000 years later. But you're saying, what are the Jewish people worth? The fact that they were pushed into this suffering against their will, and they're complaining about it and constantly want to just get rid of it? Let me tell you something, says the rabbi. You want to know what the reward that the Jewish people have? The reward that they have, even though they're not accepting it with love, the suffering, the reward they have, כאילו היה רוצה היה חבר לנוגש אותו. The Jews throughout the generations were told, all you have to do to get out of the suffering is kiss the cross. All you have to do is say, that God is the king and Muhammad is his prophet. Allah Akbar, right? All you have to do is accept it. Muhammad is the final prophet. All you have to accept. Jesus is the king and he's God. And through that you will fly to heaven. All the suffering will be over. No, it doesn't take any effort to say, I believe you, I believe. Yes, I accept it. It's such a small little word. And God sees this. And God values this. The Jews throughout the generations never gave in on. It's true, there were Jews that assimilated, there were Jews that converted, but it's very small numbers. The Jewish people had incredible faith and belief. And they could have easily just been out of the suffering. There's a story of Hannah and their 7 children. I don't remember exactly, of Hanukkah, where they put the statue in the middle of the city, and 7 of her boys were murdered right there because they would not bow down to this statue. And even the king at the end, he threw his ring. The last kid, he didn't want him to he didn't want him to be killed. He threw down his ring just to pick up the ring so that he would bow down. And the kid said no. And he murdered him. The 7 boys, Hannah and her 7 boys. And she looks up to heaven and she says, Creator of the world, Avram Avinu, you asked him to do only 1 child, and he didn't even have to sacrifice it. And I sacrificed 7. What was she trying to say? Not, I'm greater than Avram Avinu. I am a student of Avram Avinu. I'm serving you the way, in the best way I can, and I love you no matter what. And I understand that this is what he had to do, and I was able to do this because of Avram Avinu. Yes, you're right. If we would have accepted the exile for the right reason, we would be the greatest generation. And the Mashiach would come. We would see all the miracles and everything would happen if we would accept this suffering with love. Now, by the way, what's going on here? What's going on here in this last piece that we're learning? And we're going to leave the last to next class, but the last piece that we're learning here is what we understand, that when someone comes to convert, we push them away. Here, the rabbi is pushing them away. He's saying to be a Jew means suffering, means difficulty. It says in the Gemara, Sukkot, I think Gemara Avodah Zarah or Masechet Sukkah, I'm not sure, or Avodah Zarah, page number 3. It says that in the end of days, the nations of the world, God takes the Torah, puts it in his arm, and says, Kol mi she'asak b'Torah yavo v'yitol scharo. Come and get your reward. And all the nations come. Please, we want it. We want to get our reward. What do you mean get your reward? You didn't do anything. Now it's time for the reward, and you want to now get reward without the work? No. Listen. We want it. You didn't give us a chance. Give us a chance. Okay, fine. And the Gemara there talks about he gave them a few mitzvahs. He says, fine, here, go put on tefillin and tzitzis. They put on tefillin, they put on tzitzis, they wrap it on, and suddenly they see the war of Gog and Magog coming. And they ask these nations, where are you going? Al Hashem ve'al Meshicho. We're coming to destroy the Jewish people. Miyad. They take off their tzitzis, they take off their tefillin, and they say, Nishlecha avotemo nenatka mosrotemo. Avotemo, we take off these strings, right where like you're tied. Whoa, we don't want this. Get up, like tefillin and tzitzis. They're all like these strings that you tie yourself with. Oh my gosh, to be a Jew means that you're actually in prison. You're a slave. You're tied by these strings, by these bondages, and the enemy is coming, and they're coming, and we can't run away. And they say we don't want this. So here the king is saying. This is scaring him. The rabbi is saying, listen, I don't know if you want to be Jewish. You're talking about suffering, difficulties, pogrom, 2,000 years, exile. Right? Yes, we have this incredible connection with God, but it doesn't come easy. The Holocaust, we have this godly connection that God cares about us, and therefore, when we don't go in the right way, when you look in the Torah, what it says in the Parshat Bechukotai and Kitavo, wow, if you don't go my ways, what's going to happen? You can't just say, I'll be a Jew and I'll just do my thing. You have a mission, and if you don't do it, the reality will push you till you stand up to your mission. So this is scary. And therefore, when you accept the suffering, yes, they can uplift you, and it's really important. You can meet with God not only in the pleasant times, not only when it's good, but also through the suffering. And therefore, but he says we didn't accept it. There were only very few people that accepted it, and therefore, so he goes on. And again, in our generation, even though here we are in Israel, there's a war. Most people are not leaving. There's a war. There's like bombs flying. Why are people not leaving? You can go get on a plane, go wherever you want. Most people have family somewhere, right? It's easy to get out, to go. Why are we not going? Because we're here. And this is our mission, and we love God, and we love, right? And we accept it with love, with altogether a Jewish nation. Here we are. We're not going anywhere. Doesn't matter what happens, how many bombs fly, how many terrorists, do all kinds of terrorist attacks. We are here to stay. We accept everything with love. We are part of the Jewish people, and this is where we are. I don't know how much we're going to be able to continue, but we're almost at the end. And now he's explaining more about what does it mean to be Jewish. Talking about converting. You want to convert. There's no such a thing as saying a word. You have to actually make a change of who you are. It's not just a word. Aval b'maasim, in the actions, torach ala nefesh. It's actions that are very difficult. To be a Jew means mesirut nefesh, self-sacrifice. Big challenges. I know it's not fun to hear this, but this is what it is to be a Jew. Mitaher v'limud. Umila umasim to. You have to work on your character. You have to tikkun midot. You have to do mitzvot that are difficult. You have to make actions that are hard. Shinhag minagenu, right? Utnei mila v'siboteya shizko, and we have this mitzvah of circumcision. You actually have to, you're making a change in the body. And why do we change that? We have like a stamp in our body of ot ha'elohit, God's, like we are God's people. Shama sama Elohim ba'evaret. And why did God give us this mitzvah of circumcision? In the place that we use for pleasure, for lust, for desire. To tell you, you have to tone it down. You have to put it in the right place. You have to use it in the right way. You can be with a woman that's married to only your wife. and only a certain time when she's not nida. It's not that like all these things are difficulties, all these things are challenges. כאשר ראוי אל הזרע מצליח יצליח העניין האלוהי, ומי שבדבק בדרך הזה יהיה לו זרוע חלק גדול לקרבה אל האל יתברך. And whoever goes in this ways will have a closeness to God, a very big closeness. ועם כל זה לא ישתווה הגר הנכנס בתורתנו עם האזרח, כי האזרחים לבדם רואים נבואה. I don't want to go into that now. Then he explains like the status of a convert. But so we said converting in Judaism is not just a word that you blabber off and that's it. Like we said, you say the word and you fly off to the highest place in heaven. It doesn't work like the other religions. Conversion means becoming a different person. Conversion means self-sacrifice. When a person wants to be a Jew, we push him away. We say how hard it is. Shabbat and kashrut and all these things. You can't eat what you want. And you can't, right? And you have to uplift your desires. We're not saying you have to not have desires, but we're saying everything has to be put in the right perspective, in the right amount, with kosher. Okay, so that's it for now. Next week we're going to talk about, well, what does Judaism have to say about heaven and hell and the next world? Because till now we said nothing's mentioned. There's no mention of it in the Torah or in the prophets. So what do we have to say about heaven and hell? That's really the end of this book that we're learning, and hopefully we'll do a party next week. Zrat Hashem, and we should be accepting of the way that God is uplifting us. We shouldn't be challenged with difficult challenges. We should just be close to God and have pleasure and have only good things in life, in our lives.